Welcome to the program. I am DEJI360. It was jubilation galore for members of the All Progressives Congress APC last Wednesday, July the 31st. That is when the party finally got the approval from Nigeria's election regulator, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to merge. What that means in essence is that the APC is now a registered political party in Nigeria. The new party is now an addition to the over 50 political parties in the country, but it is also by far the largest opposition party in Nigeria. Opposition, of course, to the ruling People's Democratic Party, PDP. Now, as soon as INEC gave that final nod, members of the party across the country went on a wild jubilation, celebrating what their leaders say is the birth of a new dawn.
Provides a formidable choice in electoral decision making for the people of this country. Oftentimes we have seen that there has been some apathy in spite of the abysmal performance of the governments at the national level. There's been some apathy because voters have felt there was really no credible chance of giving a formidable contest in that sense in terms of national reach. Now the APC, a very historic merger, the very first in Nigeria's political history, is a sign of selflessness by all of the parties concerned, is a sign of patriotism by their membership and their leadership to surrender everything that they have owned in order to come forward as a stronger force to give Nigerians a formidable choice in governance and at the polls.
Well, that, by the way, was in Lagos State, where Governor Babatunde Fashola and other senior party officials actually led members of the party here in Lagos to hoist the flag of the APC at the party secretariat here in Lagos. Of course, you saw how jubilant the members were. We'll wait and see what happens in the coming day. Joining me now on the program is a spokesperson of APC, Lai Mohammed. Lai Mohammed, thank you very much for coming on the program. Let me start by asking you, basically, how many parties merged to form this new party? 3, right?
5.
INEC says 3.
Yeah. You see, 3 went to their conventions to pass resolutions for a merger. But factions of other political parties have been involved in the merger talks, and they are fully represented in the interim executive council of the new APC today. That is APGA and DPP.
Well, the reason I asked you this is because APGA has now issued a statement for Governor Babatunde Fashola of Lagos State, for instance, came out with an advertorial in the newspapers where he identified APGA as one of the merging political parties, and APGA has come out to say it never took part in that merger, and APGA is threatening to sue the governor to the tune of 2 billion naira and asking
20 billion
actually, and demanding an apology within 7 days.
Well, we'll leave it to Governor Fashola to respond to the ultimatum because the ultimatum is not given to the APC. But what I know is that the governor of Imo State was elected on the platform of APGA and has been a moving figure behind the merger. And any time they refer to APC governors, it's always been included. Small fact, meetings have been held in Owerri, the capital of Imo State. So for anybody now to say a faction or a part of APGA was never part of the merger, I think the fellow is living in self-delusion.
Let me ask you this. We saw your members go on a wild jubilation across the country. Just how significant is this for you?
Very. One, this is the first time in the history of this country that a merger of established political parties into one would ever take place. Two, is that people doubted whether we'll be able to merge at all. And the journey had not been smooth at all. We had several distractions. We had moments of anxiety. At a point in time, some of our members almost lost hope, and that explains the wide jubilation. It was a huge sigh of relief. Again, I think it also afforded Nigerians the long-awaited alternative mega party to challenge the ruling PDP. That is why you saw the kind of wide jubilation. And believe me, the jubilation was not limited to members of the legacy parties. That is not limited to just ACN, PDP, CPC and MPP. I think there are many Nigerians.
Yeah, I remember because you actually issued a statement saying it's the beginning of new things for Nigeria. And of course, I mean, for you, you believe that things are just about to change politically in the country. Election just 2 years away, and now you have a new party. You think the APC. Do you think you have time on your hands actually to turn the tide in 2015?
Well,
2015 is less than 2 years away,
right.
Actually.
You see, yes, we do have the time.
Or are you looking at the future, not 2015?
No. We are looking at today. It's not just 2015. We're looking at 2013. Don't forget there will be elections. There will be governorship election in Anambra State.
Yeah, this year.
Later this year. We are very concerned. We are very interested, and we're going to contest. So it's not about the future as such. It's about now. Well, yes, it's true that APC was registered 3 days ago, but APC is not a brand new party at all. Because APC is the coming together of established political parties, tried and tested political parties that have contested elections at every level and have made a success of such elections.
Because you talked about APC being the coming together of politicians who have been tried and tested, I have to ask you this because shortly after your party was registered, we saw reactions from different parts of the country, including the PDP itself. As a matter of fact, a member of the Board of Trustees of the PDP, Ebenezer Babatokwe, actually issued a statement and, basically saying, we actually have that quote if we are going to have it now. He basically said, well, that he doesn't see the APC going anywhere at all. I'm talking about Chief Ebenezer Babatokwe now. He doesn't see the APC going anywhere at all, and that the APC is just the coming together of politicians who are more or less strange bedfellows. That's the way he puts it. That you're more or less strange bedfellows and that they've been in this game for long, that there's just no way the APC. I want you to react to exactly what Ebenezer Babatokwe said.
Well, I wouldn't have expected anything less from Chief Ebenezer Babatokwe, being a member of the Board of Trustees of PDP. You don't expect him to admit that.
But he also said something very important, that you have politicians who are basically strange bedfellows in the APC.
In the APC, yes. You see, like I said, Babatokwe is a man for whom I have a lot of respect for. It's a man that has a lot of integrity. Yeah. But he's also a politician. I don't expect him to say, oh, we are worried or we are threatened. But as for strange bedfellows, who are the strange bedfellows? Incidentally, when we started the merger talk, we realized that at one time or the other, all of us belong to one party or the other.
And that is true, because it's like basically you all emanated from the PDP.
We all belong. No, we all were in the same SDP or NRC 20 years ago. That was what we found out. And that really, apart from some new entrants into the political scene, most of us had been in the same party together. Is it, if you look at the former governor of Yobe State, Alhaji Bukar, he was an SDP governor. When Tinubu was an SDP senator. If you look at Chief Tommy Kimi, he was the chairman of NRC.
Basically, people look at Buhari, for instance, to say he's one of those you would not consider that would be able to work with Bola Tinubu, for instance.
You see, unknown to many people, it is precisely these same people and the level of sacrifice they made that made this merger possible. So for us, they are assets, they're not liabilities. And many of us have been pleasantly surprised at the inner strength of these politicians.
I also want you to react to something someone else said. Chief Bode George, the PDP, also a member of the Board of Trustees, actually, he issued a statement as well saying, look, they've been in this game, that you're just like a new baby, that they've been in this game since 1999. For the past 15 years, the PDP has been on this game, that it will just be difficult for your party now, the APC, a new party, so to speak, to come and dislodge the PDP that has been in the game for the past 15 years.
Well, they might have been in the game for the past 15 years. What is happening to them today? The things are falling apart in the PDP. So that can no longer hold. Take an opinion poll of Nigerians today, and let's do, a popularity rating. And I can assure you that the PDP will score less than 30%. Yes, they've been there for a long time, but they've not been able to impress Nigerians. The more reason why APC is going to have a very good chance of winning the next election.
So for the APC, what next now that you've been registered? What next?
The
immediate future?
On Tuesday, there will be an inaugural meeting of the interim committee, or interim committee of the party in Abuja, at which we'll discuss the issues of mobilization, registration, and going to congresses and their convention.
And after that?
Oh, of course, after that, we'll continue to function.
Because you talked about going on a massive membership drive in the statement you issued.
Absolutely, yes. That's part of the mobilization, registration, and then the convention, and then our congress, our convention. And of course, we are going to set up various subcommittees to work on various aspects of our policies. And don't forget that we are not a brand new political party. This is a party where...
Somehow, yes.
Yeah, this is a party with very experienced politicians who have run political parties before. Don't forget that we have in NAFO today about 5 former national chairmen of national parties, former national secretaries, former organizing secretaries. So we have probably the most endowed, in terms of human resources of all parties today in Nigeria. We have no doubt in our mind that the task before us is, humongous, but we're also very confident that given the level of acceptance Nigerians, have given us.
Very quickly, even though we do not have enough time, but very quickly now, we had Chief Bola Ahmed Tinubu come out, issue a statement shortly after the party was registered saying the people will own this party. It was not the case. That's the general perception. It was not the case in the days of the ACN. Now we have one of your national leaders coming out to say the people will own this party. So what role now are you looking at a party now that the people will have the final say as to what happens in terms of, for instance, electing candidates to represent the party in various positions, both nationally at the state and local government level?
I've always, argued with you that the so-called lack of internal democracy in the defunct ACN was more of perception than reality. Now, but what I can assure you is that in APC, we would be very transparent, will be very democratic in the choice of officers or political office holders, and would be the reference point in internal democracy. That much I can assure you.
If your party doesn't win Anambra, the Anambra state governorship election, would you consider that a heavy setback?
Not in the least. Not in the least.
And even if you didn't win elections coming up, anyway, you didn't win elections coming up next year in Osun and the Ekiti states, would you be deterred?
I don't think you are living on this planet.
It's never going to happen, right?
It's never going to happen. Can I assure you?
All right, Elijah Lai Mohammed, thank you very much for coming on the program. Well, thank you very much for your time. Well, still to come on the program, is the APC on track to dislodging the ruling PDP? And is the balance of political power in the country about to shift? I'll be having a panel of political affairs analysts to dissect that for us. So don't go away. Stay with us. Welcome back, and if you've just joined us, you're watching DEJI360. Joining me on the program right now is Dr. Samuel Jegede of the Department of Philosophy in the University of Lagos. Also joining us on the program is a former presidential candidate, Martin Zonovo. He actually contested the 2011 presidential election under the platform of Action Alliance. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on the program. Yeah. Let me start with you, Dr. Jegede. The birth of the APC, what exactly does it signify for Nigeria?
When you talk of the birth of the APC, I think you are talking of so many things. Are you talking of APC, the thorny road to registration? Are you talking of the rejection? Are you talking of the applause? Are you talking of the controversy, etc., etc.? However, knowing where you want me to take the birth from, I think it is a good omen for Nigeria.
I mean, we saw this furore over the registration of APC, and then we saw this huge celebration across the country by members of the APC, Mr. Novo. We saw this celebration, and you know, people coming out to say it's like the beginning of the end of the PDP. Well, what's your take on it?
Well, what I take from that is that it's obvious that an overwhelming majority of Nigerians have rejected PDP. It's very obvious. But the next question will be whether the APC is the alternative. And that's the challenge we might have. But right now, there are still like 30 registered political parties. So,
yeah, of course.
As time passes, positions are going to be concretized. And the Nigerian people probably, because I think there are more fundamental problems, probably are going to have a choice, probably.
Let us look at the potential pitfalls for the APC now. Basically, what do you think are the potential pitfalls for the APC?
First is like, because there are different parties coming together, there will be heritage bias. There will be heritage bias.
When you say heritage bias, what's the meaning of that?
The ACN people in APC will have an ACN bias. The AMPP people in APC will have an AMPP bias. The CPC people in APC will have a CPC bias. That's what I mean by heritage bias. Now, that's one. And some of that has begun to play out. One of the key national officers of ACN has left the party after the formation of the interim national executive of APC. So some of that is beginning to play out. So you're going to need some time for the relationship to solidify. Yes, there was a common goal. We want to merge, and we need to get registered.
And that has been achieved.
And that has been achieved. Then you have to move to the next step. And then ultimately, the purpose of government, according to the Constitution of Nigeria, is the security and welfare of the people. The purpose of political parties is to sponsor candidates for elections into government. And that is the link, and that's the connection between the political parties and governance. So, as far as we are concerned, the idea of a coalition is excellent. But that in itself is not just sufficient in itself. We need a coalition for full position parties, clearly. We're going to need superior moral positions. We're going to need superior intellectual positions. We're going to need superior political calculations. And we're going to need superior candidates. So it's all that you need to bring in. So just registration alone and excitement is not sufficient.
It's not sufficient. Dr. Jagade, let me come to you. What do you think are the potential pitfalls? Of course, you said it's a positive development, but of course, some people have said there are potential pitfalls that this party needs to look out for, or else it might just end up like alliances we had in the past in this country.
Like he said, the possibility of disintegration right from the beginning, if not well managed, can put this association asunder. However, if the different movements, I call them movements now, within the political party, the ACN movement, CPC movement, ANPP movement, if they realize that contradictions are essential necessities of life that give rise to development, I think they will take the best advantage of that.
And I'm going to, because you talked about these contradictions now, we've also had people come out, including from the ruling PDP, come out and say, look, this is just a gathering of strange bedfellows, so to speak, and that it might be difficult for them to work together, especially when it comes to the issue of positions sometime later. For instance, who becomes the presidential candidate of the party, who becomes the governorship candidate of the party, and all of that.
You see, where I think that the APC will have an advantage is that the most senior partner in this arrangement
It's
has
obviously the
ACN, and it has a history of give and take. Remember that in the 2003 election, the then APP and AD. And what happened? The AD left it for, you understand? So I think it can still be done. Knowing full well that ab initio, ACN understood that it is the senior partner in this. And again, after former President Obasanjo's 8 years, no right-thinking person will think that the presidential slot will come to the Southwest for now in the alliance. So if they have all that behind them, then there shouldn't be too much force.
That is a tricky one, isn't it, Mr. Novo? That's a very tricky one, isn't it?
I don't think so. I think that his logic is clear and I agree with him. I agree with Doctor.
I mean, because, take a look at it. This idea of one person saying, look, I'm the senior partner in this agreement, and so I should have my say. Some people will say that's a recipe for crisis.
That's what has led to all the difficulties we have had with alliances in opposition arrangements historically since independence. And that's the way to go. And for me, disregarding the dysfunctionalities that are general in Nigeria, not just in politics, but in all sectors, this is our natural growth path. We have to go through these challenges in political development. I'm not talking about economics or infrastructure. Those are different ball games. I'm talking about in political development, because as a key member of opposition, I realize the criticality of our need for a coalition. I do realize that. And from our point of view, it's so critical that without it, we may not be able to move forward. But at the same time, what you want is a good coalition, because ultimately, you start with the end in sight. Where are we going? What's your purpose? The purpose is good governance. So you can't say simply because we need a coalition, we're going to have a coalition of crooks just to get a coalition. That's the point. Do we need a coalition? Definitely. That's not in question.
But do you think the PDP should be worried now, as we speak, with the emergence of the APC?
No. I think the PDP has always been worried, with or without the APC, and I'll establish it. There are 3 elections.
There are 3 elections. Has always been worried. We're talking about a party that has 23 states under its control.
If you listen to my next comment, you will understand why I say this. There are 3 elections in Nigeria that have been accepted by everybody. We are free and fair, beyond question. PDP lost the 3. Anambra, Edo, Ondo. The PDP is incapable of winning a free and fair election. Quote me. Incapable. of winning a free and fair election. Now, if it is...
You're probably sounding this way because you're a member of the opposition.
Okay, well, we know cases how PDP became governor in Anambra and how they lost it. We know how they became governor in Ikiti and how they lost it. So I don't know why you think it's a prejudiced opinion. I am now telling you clearly. Go and look at Anambra. Free and fair election, at least, everybody generally accepted. PDP lost. Look at Edo, free and fair, PDP lost. Look at every election that has been free and fair, PDP loses because the PDP is not accepted by the people. The PDP imposes itself on the people.
Is that your own opinions as well? You think the PDP should be worried about this merger?
Yes, and they are worried. Right from the beginning, you saw the foray that followed the attempt to come together. Oh, strange bedfellows, this and that. If people are going to bed, they know what they are going there to do, even if they are strange. And APC has proved them wrong right now. You remember one of the top notchers of PDP saying that if APC worked as a drug, as medication, it would not have yielded to Panadol or paracetamol without advertising for any pharmaceutical company. That was to show you that what he meant was that APC was dead right from birth. So PDP never gave APC the chance of getting to where they are today. They are worried because if you look at elections, let's even start here in Africa. Is it in Zimbabwe until MBC emerged with Morgan Tsvangirai that this man began to get a headache?
That's quite true.
Yeah. If you look at Kenya, until
the Rainbow
another, if you Ghana, there are always at least two strong parties. Is it the US? Is it the UK? What we have had so far before now was a one-party state in Nigeria.
But let's face it, we're talking, I want us to just project and look at the 2015 election. First of all, the APC is coming less than 24 months to the general election, which will be coming up in 2015. Do you think the APC has got enough time to be able to muster the political strength to take on a party that controls 23 states of the country, a party that says it is wounded and is determined to put up a very strong showing in the next election?
Well, do not be shocked by my reaction. That in determining the 2015 elections, APC will be a watcher and a beneficiary. Two parties will determine the 2015 election. One, the Nigerian people, who have not got anything from 14 years of democracy. By then it will be 15 years of democracy in Nigeria. So if the votes are allowed to count, APC can go to sleep. Since there is a formidable coalition now, and PDP will lose that election. The second party that will either win or lose this election is the PDP itself.
Okay.
Yes.
How?
Now, from all that is happening now, is it Rivers, is it Sokoto, suspend all your governors, remove this and that? This crisis, ongoing crisis. Now, the only choice left for PDP might be to use the garrison style to win the election at all costs. And that is where, before we came on set, my brother asked you if you were sure there will be 2015. Let us all pray there will be 2015. But we cannot continue like this.
Let me get your take on that.
I agree with you.
We're looking at a political party, 23 states under its belt now. That political party is seriously injured. It has lost series of elections in the past, and now it wants to relaunch itself, and it's determined to put up a strong showing. And then you're talking about a political party, as you speak, that controls, well, altogether now 11 states. It's not so easy to turn the tide in less than 2 years.
I want to tell you a few things. I think it's not as complicated as you want to make it. The fact is that prior to today, that APGA has formed government in Imo State, there was an election in Imo State conducted by INEC. Martin Agbaso of APGA won that election as declared by INEC. As declared by INEC. It was the second time elections were annulled in Nigeria. It wasn't as loud as June 12 because it was a state election. But that's a fact. INEC announced Martin Agbaso of ABGA as winner of elections in Imo State. And thereafter, they said they will do another election. And thereafter, PDP announced itself as usual. So, I don't agree with you at all. He made a comment that I want to re-emphasize. If the vote will count. If the vote will count, I think that PDP will not hold up to 2 or 3 states.
And that is if the opposition parties, if APC, for instance, if the center holds for the APC.
No, I don't agree. I don't agree. I don't agree. You know why? There was no APC when Martin Agbaso won ABGA governorship. Just count the votes. That's all. That's what we're saying. Let the people choose their leaders. That's democracy. Otherwise, what you have is a military dictatorship. You don't have to wear a military uniform before it's a dictatorship. A military dictatorship imposes itself on governance and on the people. And that's what you have when votes don't count. Count the votes. If the people vote for DEJI, let DEJI be governor.
All right, gentlemen, I have to thank you very much for coming on the program, and thank you very much for your contributions. Thank you. Well, still ahead on the program, the National Assembly is proposing that the controversial immunity clause be removed from the country's constitution. But the question is, are there dangers in that proposal? Stay with us to find out. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Now, the debate over the immunity clause has been a long one in Nigeria. Several people have vigorously campaigned for its removal. It now appears they are close to getting their wish granted. The House of Representatives has voted to remove the clause from the country's constitution through its ongoing constitution amendment exercise. In the Senate, the issue has not been discussed. But if the House of Reps eventually have its way and its decision is supported by majority of the state houses of assembly across the country, the clause will be deleted from the Constitution. It then means the President of the country, his deputies, state governors and their deputies will no longer be immune from prosecution. In simple language, they can be tried in a court of law while still in office for practically anything. You can expect to see our already crowded courts get busier if that happens. Joining me on the program to look at this issue is Mr. Ken Okologbo, who is a political affairs analyst and also the commissioner. Is a commissioner in the Delta State Oil Producing Areas Development Commission, the SOPADEC, I should say. Also joining us on the program is Achike Chude, another political affairs analyst. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the program. But just before we talk immunity, I have to ask you, Mr. Okologbo, you are a PDP man, and just before we got to this segment, we've been discussing the APC merger and all of that, and some of the people we've had on this program have said there's every cause for the PDP to be worried over the registration of APC. Do you share that view?
Well, yeah, it depends on the perspective you're looking at it from. Yes.
But are you worried as a PDP man?
I'm not worried. I'm not worried because I can boldly tell you that there have been, as a political scientist, I know there have not been any successful merger in the history of Nigeria.
And you think this will not be an exception?
I give them kudos that at least they have passed the hurdle of merging. We say strange bedfellows, but politics is permanent interest. Because if you see a lot of them in APC, we are members of PDP, you must also agree. And look at CPC, for example. CPC was AMPP. Buhari was AMPP. He ran twice on the ticket of AMPP and eventually founded CPC. And so you can understand that it is all the same whole, going around in circles.
But this time we have.
Do you understand what I'm trying to point
forces
out? But now we have a joint forces. Yes, don't forget that in PDP, we have PDP across 770 local government
But you
areas.
control just 23 states now.
We control 23 states. You're looking at 25%. That is all that is required by the Constitution. Because I'm looking at the presidential election. 25% in two-thirds of the states.
It's quite surprising that the PDP will be looking at 25% now.
Yes, it's mathematical. Because we must be realistic. There are areas we don't have the strength. When I was in Presidential Campaign Council, I remember when we were doing some analysis, we removed Sokoto. For example, we knew we would never win Sokoto. Do you understand where I'm coming from? I'm just telling you how we're carrying out our own analysis. We're not deceiving ourselves we're going to win Sokoto. We didn't deceive ourselves we're going to win Kano. But we needed to make 25%, so we made sure we got 25% in Sokoto. Of course, we didn't make 25% in Kano. We didn't make 25% in volatile areas like Borno. Are you understanding where I'm coming from? I don't have to tell you strategies on this program, but be rest assured that those areas of strength, the APC will take it. I concede that to them. But the areas of strength that we have in PDP is still far more than the APC.
Achike, I have to let you come in here. You think the PDP hasn't got, there's no reason for the PDP to be worried, because we've also had some PDP members, senior members at that, come out and say there's no cause for alarm.
Well, it would be funny if the PDP does not get worried about an increased challenge from the opposition. The issue is that the parties that they are contesting against now, or they will be contesting against in 2015, are not the same parties anymore.
But in fairness, do you think this party has got any time?
They have one big party. They have plenty of time. I will tell you that.
And 20 months?
Yeah. It doesn't matter. They have time. They have time in the sense that, like I said, the dynamics have changed. So the kind of political calculations that were done in the build-up to the 2011, election would have changed. The calculations now will be different. First of all, there are some people that might be enamored with what the PDP has done. For those who believe that perhaps the PDP has done some things. But there will be a lot of people who believe, that the PDP has not been able to deliver on the campaign promises that they made as a political party. And so you now have a shift, especially from those people who do not believe that the PDP has been able to offer much, since they have been in power. And then again, there's one thing that PDP's greatest strength is also PDP's greatest weakness. And that is the fact that any incumbent is in a position, especially if the Constitution mandates him to go for another term, is in the best position in a country where you have free and fair election, is in the best position to determine his fate. And that he determines more than the opposition, because he can determine that through his performance in office. At the same time, he can also shoot himself in the foot through his inability to perform well in office, while in office. So that gives the opposition, either hope or gives him a lot of cause to worry. And in this case, from what we have been seeing, there's a general impression that the PDP has not really lived up to its billing. So when you have a situation where votes are allowed to count, and the opposition is able to do its work properly, then you want to be sure that those territories, those areas that have been occupied by the PDP can be encroached upon by the opposition party.
Mr. Kologo, do you share that impression that the PDP has not actually lived up to its billing?
No, I would definitely not share that impression.
Of course, I would expect you not to share
reports,
it as a PDP man.
Very clear. Midterm reports. We are looking at, a lot of people are basing the performance of this administration on sentiments. I'll tell you, using Delta State as a case study, do you understand? Somebody the other day asked that, is my governor going for a third term in office? Why that question was asked is, they probably see my governor as, performing more than he did perform in his first term in office, when it's like he's at the twilight of his career in terms of governorship. I'm using that as a basis because the kind of construction that is going on in Delta is massive. And it also applies to Akwa Ibom. I'm trying to get Achike on this. It also applies to Rivers. It also applies to states like, when we're talking about elections, we're talking about individual states. We're talking about the strength you can have from individual states. Then you now look at the general polity. First and foremost, if we can secure, you will have 23 governors.
Yeah, that's it.
So if we can secure...
And those 23 governors, some people will say, are not actually in the kitty for you, because you have some who are neither here nor there.
Now you're getting where I'm coming from. And so, but if we can still secure those 23 states, and don't forget that outside those 23 states, there were states we won that we didn't have a governor.
That's quite true.
Do you understand? And there were also states that the governor won that we didn't win. Like Kwakwanso, for example. Kwakwanso won the election a week after we lost. In fact, we did not even make 25%.
Yes.
Do you understand? In Kano. And yet, by the next election, Kwakwanso had won. So you see, these are the arithmetics you're going to look at. And don't forget, there are two things this administration is looking at. They're looking on finishing strong in 2014. Yet there are some things you cannot say is yet Uhuru. In power, I cannot tell you it's Uhuru. But look at the airports in terms of the aviation ministry. Look at the Ministry of Works. These are key ministries. Look at the Shopee program. And look at the new policy the coordinating Minister of Finance is coming up with. Yes, I can concede with Achike that a lot of these impacts are not being felt now. But you see, these programs by next year would have matured. And this election is in 2015. And these same people who are seeing all these things from the negative perspective will start seeing it from a very different perspective, because facts are sacred. You can't tell me that when you land in Benin Airport, it is the same airport you landed in before Jonathan. It's not possible. Or you land in Jos Airport. Do you understand where I'm coming from? Or you land in the old domestic airport here. That is the same airport you have used. Or you apply the Benin or a road that people used to sleep on. It's not the same arithmetics as it was before. So at the end of the day, when people bring out these facts, yes, people want money in their pocket. They want the prices of foods not to escalate. There are basic things: infrastructure, schools, water, agriculture, looking at prices being stable, employment, cutting down on the security challenge, which has been the biggest challenge of this government. So these are the things that has inhibited the outlook of the ordinary masses in terms of judging this government. But I think with the midterm report that was brought to the fore, Achike will agree with me that with that midterm report, the president said, score me. Achike, I don't think you would score him 40%. Okay. You might still give him 51.
Achike might give him... what would you give
51,
him? No,
that's the pass mark.
Briefly, what would you give him? 51? 60?
No, I wouldn't give the president 51. You see,
but you'd give him 50. Anyway, let's. I don't want us to dwell on that now. Okay. Let us look at the issue now that I actually raised when we came on this segment now. Yeah. The issue of the immunity clause. The House of Representatives has voted to remove it from the Constitution. The Senate, it's not even an issue before the Senate. And, of course, it still has to go to the various state houses of assembly. And people are saying we're coming very, very close to the removal of that clause. Achike, what do you think? Do you think the clause should go or the clause should stay?
You see, Deji, if it's about the perception of a movement towards a positive direction in this country, on the basis of the perception value, or perception index, you could say, yes, it's a good thing. They are moving in the right direction. It means they want something positive to happen within the polity to transform Nigeria and so on and so forth. But some of us, have now tend to look at things much more deeply than a lot of other people, not at the superficial level, because we have made it our duty, to a large extent, I think, to be committed to this country. We want the best for this country, and we want the best for any government that is in power in this country. So it's not about, your religious creed. It's not about where you come from and so on. It's about your ability to deliver on the basic stipulation of the Nigerian Constitution, the welfare and the security of the people. Yeah. So in this context, on the value of what they want to do, it's a wonderful thing. Remove the immunity clause and so on and so forth. But again, like I said, you need to go beyond that. The problem of Nigeria, the problem of corruption is not about immunity. And people will tell you, and I have always said it right from the very beginning, there were how many governors from 1999 till date? Perhaps maybe over 70 governors. And I want to believe that every single one of them, that's my own personal belief, has been involved in one corruption or the other. Otherwise, the country, Nigeria, will not be...
And how many have actually been brought to book?
You understand? How many have been brought to book? We have had from
even when they're no longer holding offices.
Yes, we have had from 1999 to date over 1,000 local government chairmen. Virtually every single one of them, because of the culture of impunity, have been by force of necessity. And the fact that they know nothing will happen to them, have also been engaged in corrupt practices and so on. How many of them have been brought to book and so on? There was no immunity, preventing the authorities from moving against them. You see, for me, I have always believed that what has happened over time is that, the politicians, at all levels of governance control the security forces in this country. They control the spate of even investigation of corrupt practices and so on. And that's why people are talking about the need to make even the anti-corruption agencies absolutely independent. And then you fund them at the same time so that you don't starve them of funds. For as long as you do not do that, for as long as the politicians dictate what happens to those people who will investigate them, then it amounts to self-deceit for us to believe that once you remove... No, it is absolutely irrelevant to the direction of the fight against corruption in this country. But on the basis of perception, on the face value itself, it is a good thing because it shows that some people have been pressurized into believing that, look, we need to do something about this. But in terms of the functionality of the removal of the immunity clause, we already have governors, that are not covered by immunity, past governors, and nothing has happened to them.
Let me bring you here, Mr. Kolubo. What do you think will be the implication for you personally if the immunity of a governor or president is taken away?
It would be a very grave mistake. In the first place, I was very surprised at the way the House of Reps voted. There were 320, I think 25 members present, which was unusual. They usually would not have that high volume of members out of 360. 306 voted for the removal, 17 voted against, and 1 abstained.
That's quite a huge number.
It's so huge that I am worried. I'm worried in the sense that I do not want to believe that these 306 honorable members who are representing very vast constituencies in the House of Reps do not understand the implications of removing the immunity clause. I would align with what my good friend here has said at Chike, that how many people actually have been brought to book. But let me not even dwell so much on it, because he has done a very good exposition on that aspect. Let me look at it from this perspective. Now you have a sitting governor. You want every petition. Even now that I'm in public office, I'm a commissioner, I know how many times people try to distract me with very frivolous cases. Just because you are in office. There are some people that will not just like your face. Just because you're making progress, they're angry at you. And you can imagine where the police will have to be calling a governor for every frivolous petition that will just be written by anybody. EFCC, ICPC, police. Some do not even let go. If they finish from the police, they'll go to ICPC. If they finish from the ICPC, they'll go to EFCC. And you want a sitting governor to be coming to answer to every petition? I mean, that is exactly what it is going to come to. Because you understand that when a man is in position, everybody is eyeing him. The minute he leaves the position, he can be working without his security. Why is it like that? You see ex-governors, some people don't even recognize them. You can even stumble over them. But this man, while he was in office, you could see the immunity, you could see the paraphernalia of office, you could see the amount of policemen, amount of SS men, you could see the aura around him. Why is it like that? Because at that point, you are protecting the office, the institution of the office. So if you do not insulate the institution of office from this kind of distraction, you are just heading for chaos. I pray the Senate does not concur. It will be the biggest mistake we'll make to remove the
As a matter of fact, it's not even on the agenda.
I understand his direction, but at the same time, I would disagree on one thing, and that is, he's being surprised at the overwhelming nature of the votes
and
that supported the removal of immunity.
That's what I was going to ask you now.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I was. Do you think, in your own estimation, Achike, do you think that this House of Reps members actually voted out of their conscience, or they were actually pressured to do so because of what had happened in the Senate over the child marriage bill? And if, as you said, this whole idea of the removal of immunity clause actually resonates with the public. So the people, these members would just want to pander to.
They see, there's the issue.
What the public wants.
There's the issue of the party. There's the issue of the party hierarchy. What does the party want, and what is the party's position on this?
And unfortunately, we've not had the party come out to
exactly
make its position
and the
known.
party will find itself in a very awkward position. Not just the PDP, but perhaps the other political parties, to talk about the removal of immunity clause, because all of them have sinned and fallen short of the glory
of God.
Yes, so virtually all of them. So it's not just a PDP. I mean, it's across board. But I think that what happened is that the lawmakers were responding to the overwhelming clamor for the removal of immunity clause, against, in terms of governance in this country.
Can't we have a situation where the majority could be wrong and the minority could be right in this situation?
Well, even if the minority is right, the democratic imperative says the majority will have their way. It doesn't matter about the opinion of those. But the issue is that they are representative of a people. So yes, conscience plays a role. But again, the demand and the agitation by your people also plays a major part. Because if we had democratic tenets in place in this country and actually working properly, any person who goes against the wishes of his constituency has a price to pay when he submits himself to the judgment of the people when election comes. So they must also be conscious of that. The same thing with the Child Rights Act. The overwhelming barrage of opposition to that, particular action or inaction by the senators, made a lot of senators begin to do a very serious rethink and so on. And that means that the people are growing in consciousness in terms of expectations of their leadership. And so what has happened, you see, if they had gone or done otherwise, like the Senate, if the Senate were able to do otherwise, no matter the reasons they give, and they do not go in line with what the House of Reps has done, I can tell you clearly that it is not a reflection of the constituencies that these senators are representing, but a reflection of their own personal interest, which they have put above that of their people.
But let's face it, you actually have your worries about the removal of the immunity clause, no doubt. But let's get to the basics. Do you think this will pass when you consider the processes involved?
Yes, but you see,
because it still has to go to the various state houses of assembly. That is, if the Senate concurs. Anyway, it still has to go to the various state houses of assembly, and we're talking about the houses of assemblies where you have the governors taking control in the various states. You think the governors will allow their state houses of assembly to pass that law?
I think it's not even about the governors here. Let me point out something that with what Achike has said. Femi Gbajabiamila, the minority leader in the House of Reps, said he didn't vote for the removal. But he had to align himself with it because of the majority vote. Okay. Why I say this is, I was worried because of the numbers. It was the numbers that got me really alarmed and worried, 306. Yes, it will go to the Senate, and I pray the Senate does not align with them. But assuming the Senate aligns with the House of Reps and it goes to the state houses of assembly, don't forget that many people are leaving in 2015. Many governors, their terms are up.
That is quite true.
And also don't forget that there are senators who are interested in replacing their governors. And there are also members in the House of Assembly who are interested in replacing their governors. So it might not even be from the selfish perspective. It is also will be from their own perspective. What happens to me now if I am party to removal of the immunity clause? Nobody is saying you shouldn't investigate a corrupt governor. That is, don't get me wrong here. I don't believe a governor that is corrupt should not be investigated, or a governor that is found wanting should not be investigated. I believe he should be investigated. But a situation whereby you remove the immunity clause and make him answerable to these charges is where I find it worrisome.
So how
because
do you
the political
investigate
aspect,
a governor? How do you then investigate a governor if the governor is still in office? You have to.
How did the EFCC investigate my former governor, James Ibori? He was in office when they did all the investigation.
And then wait for him when he leaves office.
When he lost immunity. So why did... Okay, imagine if while he was in office, he was charged. Or he was asked to come to Kaduna or asked to come to Abuja. Do you understand the distraction here? Why I'm saying this is that let's look at the Electoral Act that was amended. I have run for office. I remember in 2003 when I first ran for the House of Reps, I was in court with my opponent, who was a member of the House, for 3 years. You can imagine the distraction I must have cost her. Do you understand where I'm coming from? And even there were governors that were in court. Look at a typical case in my state in Delta. November 2010, they nullified the election of the governor when he was to leave, when he was to go for another term in April 2011. And so now the act has been amended that there's a time limit. You must front-load all your witness statements. You must end the petition within a time limit. So you can imagine that from the High Court now to the Supreme Court, governors are concluding their case in 1 year. Why was that done? It was done so that you don't distract the people in the office. So when we have done this, why would they now go back to... It's like going back to your vomit. Because removing the immunity clause is even worse off. Because the issue of Electoral Act is civil case, is civil procedures, Section 135 of the Evidence Act. But you are now saying they should come under the criminal charge. Because you remove the immunity clause, you are now introducing crime, which is beyond reasonable doubt. Do you understand where I'm coming from? So it is not even the one that the civil procedure was enough to distract them, talk less of crime. Well, do you understand where I'm coming from?
Say at least lawyers will also make money if the clause.
The courts will become
because look at what is happening with election cases. So the courts will become filled up.
Yeah, that is the thing. But again, my concern is that Nigerians should really begin to focus on the right thing. And it's important. Again, even if you remove the immunity clause, it's also not going to work. It's not going to work the same reason that the EFCC is not working. And the ICPC are not working. They have the power. They have been empowered to investigate and so on. But what is happening? Because they themselves have also become nests of corruption. You understand? And so when, that's the impression I have, that when some of the operatives at the ESC or ICPC become broke, they remember a governor that is still facing, a problem, and then they pick up the person. This is exactly, what is going on. So the people must make, we cannot take away the obligation that the people have to themselves to make their country work. We must be ready to do the hard work to make this country, to run this country properly.
I think we just have to end it there. I mean, that's quite that's quite funny when they become broke. They remember. Well, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the program. Thank you very much for your time. Mr. Ken Okolugbo, thank you very much for coming. Achike,
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, DG.
We hope to have you here some other time. Well, that's it on DEJI360 this week. I am DEJI360. Thank you very much for watching. We're back again next week. Goodbye.